So at the time of recording this video, it is December 9th, 2024. Normally I don't put the dates in here because almost all the content we do doesn't really matter when it was recorded. It's all just timeless information, especially because a lot of the stuff we talk about is things that actually happened back in the 70s and 80s. But the reason I bring that up today is because we made a video earlier today talking about Nicko McBrain and how he and Iron Maiden announced his retirement from touring with Iron Maiden this last Saturday on December 7th. And I put a whole video together just talking a little bit about why he retired, the kind of the backstory behind it with his stroke. And it's an interesting story. You can go back and watch that if you want to, because it's also on the channel. But I thought we'd take just a little bit more time today and talk about Nicko McBrain and his story. And for a lot of us, and just a couple of kind of interesting things that I have here that I want to show you that I think you're going to find that you're going to enjoy. For a lot of us, when we were first introduced to Iron Maiden, it was when Number of the Beast came out and we saw Run to the Hills. We were introduced to Iron Maiden through that music video and that song. And we were introduced to Iron Maiden with Bruce Dickinson as the singer, not realizing right then that just the album previous to that, there was Paul Di'Anno that was the singer. Well, little did we know that Number of the Beast was going to be the last album that Clive Burr was going to be on. And because we didn't have the internet and information was not as readily available and it wasn't being pushed out constantly. So many of us then, when we bought the next album, Peace of Mind, when it came out, and we looked at the names, we didn't know that there was going to be a new drummer. And here's Peace of Mind, by the way. This is the copy that I bought when I was a kid. And, we buy the thing and you look on the back and there's the band list, and all of a sudden there's this Nicko McBrain. And the first thing that comes to mind when you read that name, because we didn't know who he was the album Peace of Mind. It's Eddie here had his brain removed, and we're thinking, is his name McBrain because of the theme of the album? These are the kind of things that are going through your mind when this stuff happens and you're a little kid. And then you look on the inside and you see this new face right there, which is Nicko. And this kind of interesting graphic here with the brain on the platter, which is kind of cool. But so now we have this new person, and we don't know the story behind where did Clive Burr go, what's going on, and we all kind of would, because of the video for Run to the Hills. Clive Burr is actually in that video prominently. They had this camera back behind his drums and you're watching him play those fills, and he looked so cool. And so it's kind of weird now, just all of a sudden we're just learning Iron Maiden and now there's this new person that's playing with them. And the story, a whole lot of different stories have been told about what happened and why Clive Burr left. But Bruce Dickinson, in his book, What Does This Button Do?, he actually addresses this directly. And he says that it was self-fulfilling, irretrievable disagreements. That's how he put it. I love that line. And basically, he goes on and says, when your bass player and your drummer are not getting along, you have problems. Because, of course, the bass player and the drummer, that is the rhythm section of any band. And so, and he talks about how Steve Harris had come up to him. And of course, Bruce is the new person in the band, but he talks about Steve Harris coming up to him and says, he's got to go, because they just weren't getting along. And so now Nicko now replaces Clive Burr. And Nicko's been around for a while. He's actually enters the band as the oldest person in the band. He's 30 years old. And he was a veteran too. And he has kind of this really interesting story because when he was growing up, he tells the story about how he was first introduced to drumming and why he was so fascinated by it. When he was about 10 years old, he was watching the TV and the Dave Brubeck Quartet was playing. And he just was fascinated watching them play. And he was particularly fascinated by Joe Morello, who's the drummer. And there's this drum solo in the song that they were playing. And Joe Morello had these sunglasses on. And so Nicko asks his dad, what is this? Who is this? And his dad explains to him, and he says, who's the guy with the sunglasses? And he tells him it's Joe Morello. And Nicko McBrain says, I want to be the sunglasses guy. I want to be the sunglasses guy. So he immediately started, going into the kitchen and banging on things, and he made his own little drum set with his mom's like knitting needles and buckets and things. And he just gravitated towards being a drummer. And by the time he was, he's a young guy, and he became a professional drummer. And he just kind of, that's what he'd always done as an adult, was from a professional standpoint, is he was a drummer. And he had become pretty experienced because he'd played with Pat Travers, who's kind of a legend, played with him for a while. And then he actually had played with the band Trust, this French band. And Iron Maiden, a couple of the guys in Iron Maiden, Steve Harris included, were fans of Trust. They'd actually played together before. And so when it came time for letting Clive Burr go, Nicko was kind of an obvious choice. Steve Harris had already been fascinated by him. And there's this interesting story about Steve Harris standing on the side of the stage watching Nicko McBrain as he had to improvise some stuff because when they were having some technical problems during a Trust concert, and Steve Harris thought he was just amazing. And so then when they were going to replace Clive, when they let him go at the end of the Number of the Beast tour, he became the guy that they wanted. And so one of the things that I wanted to show you that's pretty cool, and I'm going to also read to you. Okay. One of the things we do on this channel a lot is I go back and I find old newspaper articles about things and about people. I did some searches to see what I could find on Nicko McBrain, and there weren't a lot of things, but there was this one article where they actually spoke to him specifically, where they talked to him. And it's not a lot, but I still thought you'd find this interesting. But before that, I have something really, really cool. And if you've never seen this, this is a really amazing piece of Iron Maiden history. And this is a 12-inch single for the song 2 Minutes to Midnight. Now, 12-inch singles were kind of an interesting thing because unlike a 45 single, these often you could put more stuff on it. And they also enabled them to charge more money to put out something that was the size of a full-size album, but was different. And this, so I saw this in the store, and I bought it not because of 2 Minutes to Midnight, because I already had that, of course, on the album, but because of what was on side B of this 12-inch single. And there were two different things. There was this song, Rainbow's Gold, which was actually a cover song. It's not an original Iron Maiden song. It was by a group called Beckett. And I didn't know that at the time, but you could see from who wrote the song, the credits, that it wasn't anybody in Iron Maiden. So that was intriguing enough that there was a song on this album, on this 12-inch single, that was not on any Iron Maiden albums. But then there was also another song on that same side of this 12-inch single called Mission from Arie. So I said, okay, well, I got to buy this 12-inch single because it has two songs that are not on an Iron Maiden album. So if you don't know what Mission from Arie is, this is the first thing I wanted to tell you about. If you haven't heard it or you don't know anything about it and you're a Nicko McBrain fan, you need to know about this little thing. Because what happened in some concert is this is not a song. This is a recording. Mission from Arie is a recording of an argument. And apparently what had happened was that they were playing a concert, and during there was some sort of an issue where Steve Harris was having a problem with his bass. And so he sent somebody to go tell Nicko, who was apparently playing a drum solo, to go extend the length of his solo because they needed more time to get ready because of some technical issues. And when this person came to tell Nicko, I guess it wasn't his normal tech, it was just some more of a random roadie. When they tried to go get Nicko's attention, it caused Nicko to make some mistakes during his drum solo. And so this recording called Mission from Arie is not a song. It is a recording of him and Steve Harris arguing with each other about what happened. And he's like, you sent somebody to come, and I'm sitting there trying to play going, what are you saying? What are you saying? And he's messing up and all this. And so he's so frustrated with Steve that he'd done this. And so here's these two guys going at it with each other. And apparently Bruce Dickinson walked into the scene and started recording it. And he recorded these two arguing. And so for several minutes, you listen to these two guys yelling at each other. And as I recall, I haven't listened to it in years, but as you at the end of it, you hear him say, "Oh, something's recording this," and then you hear the tape player stop. So here we are. You know, Nicko McBrain's fairly new in the band, and we have this. I buy this 12-inch single, and I listen to Rainbow's Gold, which, if you haven't heard that, is awesome. I mean, it doesn't sound like an Iron Maiden song because it has this really cool, a different type of beat that's not a typical kind of Iron Maiden beat and rhythm and song. Well, because it's not their song. And it's so cool. If you haven't heard it, go find Rainbow's Gold, Iron Maiden. It's awesome. Well, anyway, so I listen to that and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is so cool. And then I hear Mission from Arie, and all I start hearing is a couple of guys yelling at each other. And you expect that to end and then a song to start, and it never does. And that's on this 12-inch single. And I wanted to share that today because if you haven't heard it, it's one of those rare occasions where you get to hear the voice of the drummer who doesn't sing on one of the Iron Maiden albums. And you literally get to listen to Nicko McBrain and Steve Harris arguing with each other, and you don't hear their voices, you know, on albums anyways, but here they were put on vinyl, this really intense moment of the two of them. And later when they played it back, they listened to it and they thought it was so funny that they thought, let's put this on a 12-inch single and we'll just put it there. And it's part of the cool Iron Maiden history now. Anyway, so you can find it. I think the last time I checked, it was on YouTube and elsewhere where you can find that little piece. Well, anyway, so the other thing that I wanted to share with you today, as I said, because we do this a lot on this channel, is we just go back and find references and interesting newspaper articles. Well, what I found was this article from the Casper Star Tribune, and Casper, Wyoming. And this is from June 19th, 1983. And basically what this is that it's an announcement that Iron Maiden is going to be playing in Casper, Wyoming. And it's interesting because the announcement is part of apparently they're playing there with Fastway and Saxon, who are two other kind of heavy metal hard rock bands. And we've never done a video on Saxon. I have a few of their albums, but I think we have done videos on Fastway. And we're not going to talk about them in here, but they're touring together, and the title of this is Heavy Metal Across the Water on American Tours. The British are coming, Iron Maiden, Fastway, and Saxon. And the reason I picked this particular article out is that this is a tour, of course, that Nicko McBrain is playing on, but also he's quoted and they reference him in this article, which is not, especially in newspapers, not something you would see a lot. And so I thought it's because it's today and he's just announced his retirement, etc., or retirement from touring. I wanted to share this with you. So here's the article. Casper, the English are coming to Casper with the pedal to the metal, heavy metal that is. The English rock groups Iron Maiden, Saxon, and Fastway will appear together at 8 p.m. Tuesday at the Casper Event Center, and according to band members from Iron Maiden and Saxon, they are ready to rock. The idea for Iron Maiden was formed by bass player Steve Harris in 1975, with the name inspired by the movie The Man in the Iron Mask. The group has gone from playing clubs in London's East End to 2 world tours and 4 albums. Harris, vocalist Bruce Dickinson, guitarist Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, and drummer Nicko McBrain opened their 4.5-month American tour in Casper. In an interview this week, McBrain described the group as having the same concept of old hard rock groups such as Deep Purple, but the sound is different. The group pours sheer energy into the enjoyment of rock music, he said. Quote, "We, the band, have the same kind of grassroots," McBrain said. "Early Purple, Jethro Tull, Free. My kind of hard rock tastes go back to Led Zeppelin, hard energy rock bands, mainly English bands." And that's kind of interesting because when you listen to Nicko talk about his history, you know, he was originally Joe Morello, like we said, that was when he was introduced to the idea of drumming. But then he sees Ringo Starr and he wants to be Ringo Starr. And Ringo was kind of a hero to a lot of people back then. Well, I mean, all the guys in the Beatles, depending on what instrument you were interested in. But he became enamored with Ringo Starr. And then he becomes enamored with Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones. But what really helped him define who he became, who Nicko McBrain became, was when he was introduced to two other drummers. And one of them was Keith Moon, and the other was John Bonham. And somehow what he ended up kind of creating for himself was, in some ways, a hybrid of the two. You can hear him talking a little bit about this in some interviews. But and that goes back to why Bruce Dickinson, in his book, the book I mentioned a minute ago, What Does This Button Do? He actually says that Nicko McBrain, watching him, it's like he is Animal from the Muppets brought to life. And that's how Bruce Dickinson describes him in his book. So anyway, but he makes this reference here, goes back to Led Zeppelin, hard energy rock bands, mainly English bands. The band, which is successful in Europe and coming on in the United States, attributes its, quote, unique success to the hard work of the band and to, quote, playing to the kids and our public, McBrain said. It feels great giving something back. He said heavy metal is here to stay. Quote, "It might get a new tag one day. When I first really put my mind in it, it was underground," unquote. From underground, it was called heavy music. It became just rock and roll with the Bill Haley, Little Richard tag. Iron Maiden's bizarre album covers stand out in the record racks. They are emblazoned with a familiar skull dubbed Eddie, just an everyday skull. The group's new album, Peace of Mind, was released June 2nd and has already sold more than 300,000 copies. Capitol Records is confident the album will attain platinum status. And the rest of the article talks about Saxon and Fastway, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. So anyway, just kind of interesting again to have an article like that where they reference specifically, instead of talking to the other guys in the band who've been in the band at least for a while, in Bruce's case, one album longer than Nicko, but they actually interviewed Nicko McBrain and talked to him, and he makes that reference to the type of music that they're influenced by. And it's really interesting, again, looking at those specific influences for him, who ended up really becoming such an important force in heavy metal. Because when you look at the trajectory of Iron Maiden, you know, they had those first couple of albums with Paul Di'Anno, and then they bring Bruce Dickinson in, and he somehow takes them to this whole other level. And then they let Clive Burr go, and then Nicko comes in, and he kind of brings this whole other energy. And then that really became the formula for Iron Maiden for the next, well, for a while. And then there were other changes that happened, but that really became the core that lasted. And then really brought so much of that amazing music to us from Peace of Mind. And then we had a video a while ago that we talked about Power Slave, and then just on and on after that. And then, you know, they ended up having this legacy now that's gone on for, well, he played in the band. Nicko McBrain played in the band for 42 years. 42 years he was in the group. And anyway, just really, really remarkable. And what a legend. And to bring so much great stuff and to leave such a mark on the history of popular music, on the history of heavy metal, and worldwide. It's because it's incredible when you look at Iron Maiden, without having any real popular support. What I mean by that is they were never They were never a band that got a lot. They didn't get any radio play, really. And it wasn't like they were darlings of MTV or anything like that. They just made this great music. And so in some ways, they were almost like this underground band that became this just massive success. And to this day, they can go almost anywhere in the world and fill up an arena. It's remarkable. There's not a lot of bands that can do that. And Nicko McBrain has been a part of that for now 42 years. And it's one of those amazing, one of those things to look now, and it's a sad day, but it's also an amazing thing to look back at the legacy that this person left and all this incredible music that he was able to bring to the world. Hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Please follow the channel if you're not, and like the video, and leave your comments. If you had the pleasure of seeing Nicko in concert, seeing Iron Maiden, and what your thoughts are about this time, watching as some of these people age, and Nicko's, I think, the only one in the band that's in his 70s. He's 72 now, and to have these things happen where you start seeing these people have to retire, and the fact that he was able to recover from that stroke. And like I said, I talk about this in this whole other video, but he literally lost the use of his right arm, and to be able to overcome that and to gain it all back enough to be able to make it through this tour, and now to finally have this moment of retirement. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and with that, have yourself a fantastic day.